Hello again and welcome to From the BON, the Burnley podcast. My name's Simon Evans and I'm here with Justin Connolly and Chris Bowden this week. And Paul Woodhouse can't join us, and Greavesy is also on his travels. We're going to have a quick word with Greavesy from something we prepared earlier soon. But how are you doing, fellas? Are you all right?
Very well, thank you, Simon. Yeah, all well here.
Good. So, yeah, the action is underway. It feels a little bit sooner than we were expecting, but some of the pre-season friendlies are underway, and it's all starting to feel a little bit realer now, and a little bit less of a sort of abstract that we've had these discussions about signings and ideas and all sorts of things. So Burnley were back in action at the weekend at Genk, and then away at Benfica on the second leg of their European tour. So I spoke to Greavesy a little bit earlier and got his thoughts because he watched both those games pretty closely. And I asked him what he thought about Burnley's first impressions. So, Andrew, two friendlies in the past days for Burnley, really starting to step up the preparations now. I know you were able to watch a bit of the Genk action as well as the Benfica one, which I think many more of us saw. But what was your impressions overall from those first two games?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that kind of Genk, the club made it as difficult. Well, not Burnley necessarily, but it was difficult to watch. So hats off to Kyle Walker 98 on Instagram, who, like an absolute warrior, was live streaming from the away end for most of the game, which was quite a good way of watching it. It was a bit weird, really, seeing those two games, because I think if you were to look at the starting 11s, you'd probably expect the Genk starting 11 to be more closely aligned with what we might expect to start against Man City in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But actually, the Benfica performance was just incredible. I mean, Genk, like I said, very limited kind of viewing of that game, but it felt a bit ragged. It felt a bit, like a first pre-season game in a proper stadium. I thought we were decent first half, created some chances, perhaps unlucky to kind of go behind. Trafford in his first game perhaps didn't cover himself in glory, kind of getting under a cross and, Genk taking an early lead. But the Benfica game, wow, I mean, you got to pinch yourself, really. They were, Champions League quarter-finalists, Portuguese champions.
Yeah.
Decent side, beat them with, to be slightly cheeky with our kind of second string to a certain extent. But
when you saw the lineup at the start, you thought, "Ooh, this is a bit risky playing so many, players who we don't expect to start against Manchester City when we're playing against the Champions League team here." But actually, we did more than handled ourselves well, didn't we? I mean, almost dominated.
Yeah, I thought we were superb. I mean, kind of, you looked at that back line and you were kind of right. What's the setup here? Alderweireld. I mean, we've talked about Alderweireld quite a bit, but I mean, what a player! At right back in that first half, just looked superb. He's so comfortable on the ball. He's got so much time on the ball. Ekdal, superb at centre half. Muric, I mean, just that first half from Muric, there were a couple of flashes in the second half. But the first half, I mean, he comes out well out of his area to collect a ball, nice and calm. It's a double save. It's another save later on. He's coming for crosses. I mean, I think everyone thought it was a foregone conclusion that Muric was on his way to Turkey and Trafford was going to start as number one, but I'm not sure I'm not sure he will. You know what I mean? I think Muric, I think you were joking on our WhatsApp group. Muric saw the Trafford announcement and chose, vengeance, and he was just incredible. But that's what company wants, isn't he? He wants two goalkeepers going hammer and tongs to get that number one spot.
Yeah, we'll get into the Muric thing a little bit later because I think it is going to be like a big decision that for Company. But there was also on the team sheet a player listed as trialist. They used to be called A and Other at one time in some forms of football. But what was your impression of trialist?
Yeah, very proud moment for the trialist family getting another one of their kids into a starting 11. But yeah, I mean, I always find it weird that clubs insist on sticking with this. I mean, even the match report didn't mention Townsend, even though Andros Townsend, for anybody who hasn't, who's been living under a rock for the last week, I thought he looked superb, and his fitness levels were not at the level where you'd be kind of, it felt like he was properly match fit. You know what I mean? Sometimes you kind of go, well, there's fitness levels because he's playing for a contract, etc., etc. But his intensity was good. I mean, he had a shot for the second goal, which the rather hapless Benfica sub goalkeeper spilled for Ekdal to seize upon from 6 yards out. But I tell you what, on that showing, I think he's worth. Listen, he's not going to cost us anything. His wages probably won't be the cheapest, but I think if he can keep as fit as he is doing, and as he looked the other night, I think he's got to be worth a 12-month contract.
It's an interesting one. That he certainly looked like he was playing for his contract, playing for his place. Yeah. He was fired up for that game, wasn't he? And really making some contributions. Very left-footed, of course, as we knew. But there were a couple of times he went down the right and cutting back onto his left foot. But then he did deliver good crosses in there. I thought he was hugely impressive. Anyone else catch your eye in these games?
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned Ekdal. I mean, he starts the move that leads to his goal, the second goal, coming out of defence. We know he can do that. I mean, we're just blessed at the minute with defenders who can walk the ball out of defence. Bear, we know, can do it. Alderkeel can do it. Ekdal can do it, and I think that's going to be really important. Young Dodgson, I thought he struggled first half a little bit with perhaps some of the intensity and the pace. But he was playing at Rochdale last season. But he switched to right back second half in place of Alderkeel, and I thought he looked pretty good. Twine, he's had a couple of decent games. He's, looked busy and things like that. I just worry whether he's strong enough. And I know it's not universally kind of, popular, but I actually didn't think Weghorst was that bad in the first half against Benfica. A couple of half chances, which he was perhaps a little bit caught on his heels rather than his toes to get onto. Yeah. But he's back late to pre-season training. He certainly looked a lot more kind of part of the group than perhaps some of them early videos that we saw. Obviously, booed at Genk by all accounts and, jeered for every touch. I still stick by the point I made a couple of weeks ago. He won't be here for the start of the season. I'm almost certain. I think Company will have seen enough in them first two appearances to suggest that he's perhaps not the kind of person who's going to fit into the system he wants to play. But I didn't think he was that bad against Benfica. A lot of people said he looked disinterested or didn't look sharp enough. He essentially only had about a week of training behind him, so perhaps to be expected.
Yeah, I don't think he looked sharp enough, but I wouldn't say he wasn't interested. I think that's people projecting things onto him a little bit there. But interesting one. So, Justin, I mean, watching those games, the Benfica one in particular, where it is pretty amazing that the game wasn't broadcast in the UK or anywhere outside of Portugal, but it seems almost every Burnley fan who wanted to was able to watch that. So we all watched it. What were your impressions of the Clarets in action against Benfica?
I thought it was, for a start, it's brilliant to be talking about actual football, isn't it? Instead of talking about all these transfer rooms and stuff, and seeing some of these players that we've been talking about on the pitch. I mean, you've got to really approach it with the usual caveats that it's just a pre-season friendly, and although it was against strong opposition, I'm pretty sure that the Burnley lineup wasn't the lineup that we're going to see take the field against Manchester City.
No.
But the bottom line was it was a good performance against a strong team, wasn't it? And there weren't many players in the lineup who didn't, do themselves a lot of favours when it comes to that first selection. Particularly impressed by the way they defended, particularly impressed by Alderkiel. I thought had a great game. He was playing out of position, wasn't he, at right back? So
yeah, played very well.
He performed very well. Ekdal performed very well. Dara O'Brien was pretty solid in the mid. I mean, it was just a solid performance all around. One or two players were a little bit more anonymous than you would have expected them to be. But like I said, it's a pre-season friendly, and it's not going to be clicking on day one, is it?
No, it isn't. But it was a pretty solid display, I thought. I agree with you, Chris. What were your impressions?
Yeah, just really, really encouraging. Thought really sort of brave and aggressive with the way they pressed. I mean, it's you're looking at some of the Benfica lineup. Di Maria, fresh out of winning a World Cup. Ramos, who scored a hat trick in the group stages for Portugal, and João Mario played. But they just, it was just fantastic to see someone like Owen Dodgson, who's just got relegated to the National League with Rochdale, going toe to toe with Di Maria, and not just not taking his reputation, just going toe to toe with him, really. And
as well.
Terrific finish, yeah. Just a night, no matter what happens to him in his career, in his Burnley career, just you'll never take that away from him. It's a goal against former European Cup winners, Champions League quarter-finalists, etc. But Alderkiel sort of played in that almost that Kyle Walker type role, and he sort of inverted fullback coming inside and making use of his range of passing, his recovery pace, etc. Ekdal, I think, the amount of times we saw it last season, how he'll start a move and follow it through, sort of be the one who's picking up on a mistake from the goalkeeper. Terrific, spoilt for choice at centre half. With Bayer and I say still so much competition. You couldn't pick a central defensive two at this stage, I think, and. Obviously, Muric pulled off two absolutely sensational saves. The double save from the headers. João Mario with one of those, and again he's a couple of slips with his distribution, but on the whole, his distribution was a massive asset for Burnley, and that's going to be a battle royale, isn't it, for the goalkeeping position?
Well, let's go into that. Yeah,
I was going to say, I think. That was the most surprising thing that happened on the night, really, that Muric started, in goal, because I think the expectation has been, hasn't it, that he's going to leave this summer because we've signed these two keepers and we've just spent a lot of money on Trafford. So why play him if he's leaving? Why play him in one of the few pre-season friendlies we've got if he's going to be leaving? And I just thought he had a sensational game. He did all the things that he did that we were praising him for last season. So, maybe Trafford isn't guaranteed nailed on number one spot, even though we spent all this money. Maybe it is something that for the future, and Muric is going to go toe to toe with him. I think that's a healthy situation for us, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I think it's really interesting as well that during that game, the first sort of 20 minutes or so, we were a bit tentative, weren't we? And then there was a moment when Muric started coming really off his line and going into that sweeper position and started knocking these passes around. And it was almost like he got us playing. He got the passing movements going again. Yeah. And we started playing that company style of football as soon as Muric got involved in the play, really.
Yeah, and the kind of the only thing you need to know about that game and how it panned out is that the two goals were scored from open play by two defenders. That's how sort of aggressive and how on the front foot we were.
The other thing that stood out for me in that game was, as we were saying with Greavesy, trialist. I thought trialist. Andros Townsend really was, like I was just saying there, really playing for his place, playing for a contract, and looked pretty good. I mean, what are our thoughts on Andros Townsend after that display, Justin?
I thought he looked like a player who was playing for a contract, trying to earn himself a deal. He looked to me like he's still got a trick or two up his sleeve. You know, he beat defenders several times with some really tricky stuff, and he just looked engaged. He looked like he was enjoying himself, and you know, he should be given one. He should be given a contract on that showing. Apart from what he can bring on the pitch, he can bring a lot off the pitch as well, helping these young players who've never. Quite a lot of the players we've got have never played in the Premier League, so they will need that sort of level of guidance off the pitch. But from what I saw, you know, against Benfica, he's got a lot to offer on the pitch as well. And I hope they can tie it down this week before somebody else gets hold of him.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of nous, hasn't he, Chris? He's got that little bit of just that
he's got that. We've obviously, you know, he's experienced at the top level in international level. You know, he was one of the pundits in the World Cup. You know, he's got that sort of ability to analyze and look at a game from that perspective as well. But I just thought he looked really lithe, really fit. You know, obviously he's had that. You know, the issue he could do absolutely nothing about. You know, he had the knee injury that sort of killed his time at Everton, because he'd done all right at Everton in that early spell before then. But we all know that. So we talk about, you know, the Sakas come in inside and Salah come in inside, and you know what they're going to do, and it's hard to stop. And he's got that Townsend. You know he's going to come in onto his left peg, and he's going to unleash. And one of the goals came. He wasn't the greatest shot in the world, but the goalkeeper's made a rick, and you scored a goal. And you remember the effort. Absolutely magnificent goal he scored against Burnley season before last, when he'd been anonymous in the game. And that you might need that once or twice this coming season. But Burnley maybe don't see as much of the football. You're under a pump, and you need someone who can just pull something like that out of the bag. Really, it's a great pro, and it just a no-brainer really to bring him in on a Freeman's.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that one. There were a couple of things that got exposed a little bit against Benfica. Now, maybe exposed is too strong a word, but sort of food for thought, really. I thought the fact that we do need another central midfielder, I thought, did come through a little bit in that game. There were moments where we saw this last season a couple of times as well, where Jack Cork does get sort of turned quite easily and can't he pulls, picks up them yellow cards as he did against Benfica for pulling somebody back. That's an area that we haven't brought anyone in yet, that I think needs to be addressed. I mean, we've talked about Lokonga as being a possibility from there, and it seems to have gone quiet, that one. I haven't heard anything about a central midfielder. There's Vrank as well, who Sasha Tavolieri was talking about for that position. But it did look a little bit with, that midfield, no Cullen obviously, but with JBG and Jack Cork, it wasn't the sort of strongest central midfield, really, was it, Justin?
No, Scott Twine was in there as well, wasn't he?
That's right, yeah. I'm
pretty sure we're not going to start with those two in the centre of midfield, but there's no Brownhill as well either. So we've got
correct.
We have got a couple of options who you might consider to be first team regulars next season who weren't playing in that game.
Cullen and Brownhill, really. Yeah.
Cullen and Brownhill. I mean, it was a bit of a strange formation, I thought, because we seemed to be playing like a bit of a 4-4-2, didn't we? It was like almost back to the Daesh days with Weghorst and Rodriguez sort of playing up front. I didn't sort of detect that either one of them was particularly coming deep and playing in that sort of number 10 role. But I'd be surprised if we line up like that when it comes to it. But it's interesting that he's sort of experimenting with that sort of thing, isn't it?
I thought Jay was very deep. He was almost like a centre mid, Jay, which it's, if you note that when you say that Weghorst's great success, in terms of his initial period at Burnley, those first four or five games, is when he was the one who was dropping deep, and I'd say that he's got that ability to take you up the pitch, whether that's by back to goal or sort of driving with the ball in those areas. And if you remember him sort of playing Jay in to score against Manchester United, it's I would have preferred to have seen it the other way around if anything. But I say you're not going to see a Burnley side as light as that in terms of physicality. I think in the Premier League, we went for the technicians really rather than the ball winners. I saw was a bit of a Sky thing, a bit of a poll the other day. Who's going to win most challenges in the Premier League this season, and a different type of player now maybe and deployed differently by Burnley. But Josh Brownhill was usually one of those who was top of the interceptions, top of the the tackles won sort of table, and I think he could give Burnley that bit of bite, but they need someone else in and around him, don't they? Really,
I think they do. I think they must be looking at someone. You feel like you want somebody who's a more physical presence there. Just somebody who's maybe 6 foot tall, bit of muscle on them, mobile, get up and down, get about, break things up a little bit. Somebody who can go and win the ball and give it to Cullen to start distributing. I mean, they're hard to find, those players, because every team wants a player like that, don't they? Weghorst, we did mention Weghorst there. Obviously, the Genk game, I didn't see anything other than a few highlight clips. But we do know from obviously the reports that came out and were all over social media that Weghorst was booed onto the field by a section of the Burnley support and booed whenever he touched the ball as well, which caused a big debate online about whether that's the right way to go about things and justifiable or not from the fans. I mean, what do we think about that, Justin?
Well, I just don't know what the point of it is. What's? I mean, we all want Burnley to do well, don't we? And booing an individual player, whoever it is, has naturally got to work against that, hasn't it? I just don't understand what the expected outcome is that people are looking for. Are they looking to make him feel unwelcome so he doesn't want to stay? Well, I'm not sure whether that is going to determine whether he remains or not. It's going to be more likely whether we get a decent offer for him, isn't it? I just think of all the outcomes for Weghorst this season, every Burnley fan must want him to stay and score 20 goals and fire us into Europe. Well,
it's not going to happen, is it?
Well, it's not going to happen if they keep booing him, is it? That's for sure. Or at least that's not going to help, is it? It just seems to be the height of stupidity, booing your own players. I mean, boo opposition players. Fair enough, that's fair game. But booing your own players. I mean, I know it's only a pre-season friendly, and I'm not sure whether it would happen in a game that counted. But I don't know what these people are thinking. What do they want to happen as a result of that?
Well, I mean,
I could see if go on, Sam.
Go on, Chris.
No, they're saying I think it's obviously down to if he stays put, we'll not hear any of that. But I just think you are inevitably going to get some sort of backlash, and I've seen some people say, "Well, Ben Mee left Burnley in the lurch, and Nathan Collins and Tarky and Dwight McNeil, and different." These are players that have given years and years of loyal service to Burnley, and and we all understand that the premise was Louis van Gaal wants him to play top tier European football, to be at that level, to go to a World Cup, and so be it. But I think you can't just report him back after you've sort of sold your soul to he couldn't have put himself further in the shop window for Manchester United in terms of his desire to stay, which you can't blame anyone for wanting to play for Manchester United. But to come back into Turf Moor after the hard work's been done, you've left when you've been relegated. You come back when the lads in the dressing room, blood, sweat, and tears have got you promoted back to that level. I can understand there's a bit of a narkiness around it, to be honest, but I'm sure it'll dissipate. And if he stays beyond August, they'll be fully behind him, providing he puts it in, and we get a shift out of him.
To be honest, we didn't get a shift out of him against Benfica, did we? Really? Let's be honest. I mean, he only played that first 45 minutes, didn't he? But I mean, let's be honest. If he was a trialist, I'm not sure we'd all be sitting there going, give that man a contract, would we?
Good
I mean,
point.
he was tidy. He did a couple of tidy bits and pieces, didn't he? But he wasn't. He wasn't
actually won a
racing on the
header.
pitch. Yeah. That could be a first.
But
Yeah, I think, to be honest, the whole Weghorst thing, I think we've talked about this before, and you know, we work in the media, and so, you know, we understand how the PR game works as well, right? Even if, well, Chris, you're working in that field a bit now, but we know as journalists, I'm dealing with PR people every day. I'm dealing with clubs over the years who've had to have PR strategies to deal with difficult situations. And how Burnley have handled Weghorst returning is almost a textbook case of how not to deal with a difficult situation, because you have to confront it up front. I think the moment he walks through the door at Burnley back to training, if the goal is for him to stay at the club and be a part of the team, and that really is what's going on, then you have to sit down and put out a video or an interview where he says, this is what happened. This was a misunderstanding. This is why I did it. This is what I want to achieve. I'm 100% behind the manager and the team. I apologise to the fans if there was any misunderstanding there. It was a World Cup. I was desperate to play in it. Look at me. I played against Argentina. That wouldn't have happened if I'd have been playing in the Championship. There's a whole narrative he could put out there that I think most reasonable people would say, fair enough, you know, especially if it came along with like a very clear commitment to doing the right thing now. And they haven't done that. They put out a little video that was very flippant about him coming back to the club. And I think that inflamed the opinion that was there from fans who maybe have gone over the top in their criticism of him leaving the club in that fashion, maybe haven't been understanding, because let's face it, Burnley Football Club agreed to that clause in his contract. So you can certainly justify what he did. But it hasn't been communicated properly at all. And if he is going to stay, it's still not too late to do that now. But they don't seem to be doing that kind of thing of like, listen, you know, and maybe this is a positive from the booing. I mean, I've never booed a Burnley player when I've been a fan at Burnley or anything growing up, even with some of the awful players we had, you know, in the dark days of the 4th Division. I don't remember, you know, I didn't like it when someone like Peter Hampton got booed or something like that. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit well with me. But if anything positive could come out of it, it might be to force the club to address the issue and to do something and realise that, oh, yeah, we do have a problem here. You know, we have to deal with it. Who knows what the problem, the bigger and the more important problem in the dressing room, though, you know, with the situation with what went on with Conor Roberts, and there's been reports. Andy Jones in The Athletic said that, you know, there was a feeling that Weghorst was a bit arrogant, or that's how his behaviour was interpreted. That needs to be sorted out. But, yeah, I mean, ultimately, the only person who's got the answer to any of this is Vincent Kompany, isn't he?
It's up to him, isn't it? If he wants to keep him or if he wants to let him go. I don't see, you can't sort of definitively say, he's back in the building and we're delighted to have him back, and you know, hopefully can score a few goals. If he doesn't impress Kompany in training and in the, you know, the bits of pre-season games he gets, he's not going to feature. If he don't feature, it's almost one of the, we all, let's say, like Justin says, we all want him to sort of pull on the shirt and start, you know, scoring goals at the rate he was scoring goals in Germany with Wolfsburg. But you look at things, you almost wish one of these Saudi clubs would just turn up and say, right, we'll give you 20 million quid, and we go, thanks very much, and move on. There's
an awful lot of players in that category at the moment, isn't there? I'm sure this club sat there going, you know what, Ali Tiad, you give us a call. Yeah. But he did that. I mean, but that also raised as well, you know, seeing Weghorst and Jay up the middle, and we know that's not going to happen against Manchester City. But there's still that number 9 question, isn't there? I mean, Zeki came on in the second half and didn't really make much of an impact. I didn't think, anyway. I mean, anyone think that he did?
No, he was very quiet, wasn't he? He didn't really. He probably didn't. He didn't have time to impress, did he?
No.
Let's be honest. No. And you know, you can't expect him to come out of the blocks on his debut, a few days after signing, and sort of blow everybody away.
Not at all.
So we'll just have to see how that one develops. But whether he is that number 9, the jury's still out, isn't it? Last week we said he's not an out and out goal scoring number 9 target man striker, is he? Which is the sort of thing that we need in that position. But you know, it's too early to judge on that performance, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there were signs, and people who watched the Genk game, who were there, did say that Foster showed up really well in that game. He didn't feature against Benfica, but I think he started, didn't he, against Genk, Foster at number 9. And the reports were that he looked as good as he has done for us. So, I mean, that's a bonus. If he can really get going, I mean, he obviously is the person for that position, isn't he? But
yeah,
nothing that happened last year indicated he's a Premier League level number 9.
No, there's something there, isn't there? He's got, like I say, that ability to drive with the ball and dribble with it, which could come in handy. But little flashes, but not enough. So it remains to be seen how long Obafemi's out. But sort of the encouraging signs the last few days, the sort of noises are that this Teller thing's going to sort of amplify before the end of the window, and it's might be one of those where a lovely kid where he's just got to dig his heels in, a la Ben Gibson, and behave out of character and force a move with some, erratic behaviours, shall we say?
Yeah, there's a bit of a meme going on online, isn't there, with photographs of him looking really miserable in a Southampton kit, and then juxtaposed with photographs of him beaming from ear to ear in a Burnley shirt.
The thing is, like we were saying in one of our podcasts, that like he was the top smiler last season in the championship, wasn't he? His expected smiles were a stat we were talking about with him, and he does look miserable in them photos. Of course, I'm sure there's a bit of selective editing going on there, but that would be fantastic if he came back. I mean, but even then, is he an out and out number 9 in the Premier League, Teller?
No,
we don't have an out and out number 9.
No, I mean he operated in a couple of different roles, didn't he? Sort of wider forward and a couple of times through the middle. And like I say, he'll score goals. He's got enough pace and enough about him to think. I think he'll score goals given the adjustment of if he was to perform regularly at Premier League level. But I just think that'd give. I mean, I think most Burnley fans are very, very pleased with the business so far. But if you were to land him, say, the week of the City game, I think that'd give the club and the fan base a massive boost.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the business is going on, and we've brought in Jacob Bruun-Larsen, another winger, which has set off a few fans with another winger. And there has been a bit of a sort of. He isn't one of those signings that's got people really excited, is it? Really, but that's probably a bit unfair on him coming in after some signings like Trafford and Amdouni, where really intriguing signings, as we said, signings that get your imagination going. But a player from the Bundesliga, a Danish international, it's not a bad signing on the surface, is it? I mean, but the amount of wingers argument and people saying, well, I mean, if you look at last season, there was an awful lot of games where he switched both wingers, didn't he? We live in the 5 sub era, don't we? So, if you're playing with 2 wingers and you're going to take them off when they're tired and bring on Benson, or take off Benson and do those rotations that he did during the game, that's 4 wingers you're using in a match, right? You throw in the fact that probably one of them is going to be injured at any given time in the season, possibly a suspension here and there. And having 6 wingers isn't really as excessive as it sounds, is it?
No. I said a couple of them could play in that 10 role as well, can't they? So Johan might come inside, things like that. And I say at the end of the day, I mean, he sounds like he's struggled a little with injury, but he's obviously had time with Vincent at Anderlecht. But I was reading an article about he's sort of earlier period at Dortmund when he came through the youth setup and broke into the first team, and he was playing with Jadon Sancho and Marco Reus in like a 3. And I mean, I'd love to have seen that. The 3 of those together are absolutely lightning. But they reckon Brun Larsen was quicker, the quickest of the three. Now, if we're talking, you need pace at, the one thing that we've really struggled with in the Sean Dyche era at this level is pace at this level. And if you're quicker than Sancho and Marco Reus, you'll do for me.
Yeah, and also the key thing about Brun Larsen is that company knows him, doesn't he? He's played for him before, so he's not one of these that's been plucked out of thin air. And if company sees something in him, don't forget it's just a loan as well, isn't it? We haven't bought him, so it's not like we've invested any cash in his sort of long-term future. But if company knows him and trusts him and thinks he can get something out of him, then that's. Also, it doesn't use up one of our English loans, does it? So there's still sort of room for Maatsen and Taylor Howard-Bellis, because I don't think we've got any loan players in yet from any English sides, have we?
No, it is a loan, but I think it's got the mandatory purchase element in there. Although I do wonder, after that Koulibaly deal fell through, and it was because we were arguing about the mandatory purchase part of it, I do wonder, as ridiculous as it sounds, whether these mandatory purchases are as mandatory as they sound. Are they mandatory with a get-out clause in there? That if we go down, or if he doesn't make a certain number of appearances, or I don't think they're always, from what I understand, as mandatory as you take him on 1 year loan and then you've got to sign him no matter what. I think that's maybe why we didn't sign Koulibaly. I mean, Chris, you've looked at these kind of deals in the past. I mean, I don't think they are as tied on always as they sound.
As you say, there can be all sorts of little, sub clauses and so on and so forth. But looking at Maatsen, he's just reading the quotes from Mauricio Pochettino. He's so far, Ian Maatsen is in my plans. He's a clever player. He's I'm so happy with him. He can play in different positions, and whether push comes to shove, and he has got a number of options in that area. The senior first team options, but and whether
he's just trying to get a season in the Premier League, 20 million. That's all he's doing. He's trying to squeeze that extra 5 million out of it. If Owen Dodgson plays as well as he did the other night, we might not need him.
It's a step up and a half, though, isn't it? From bottom of League Two to
you said, Di Maria.
That's how I think. I love stories like that, and I love that'll be one for the scrapbook, telling his kids about forever to come. But I would imagine he needs a loan somewhere else first again, doesn't he?
I think it's his mum on Twitter. There's somebody with his name who's very supportive of him and tweeted a lot of things. So I suspect she'll have a scrapbook on the go, definitely. But no, I mean, it's a funny thing about players like that, though. You're right. He's just been playing for Rochdale, and then suddenly he's playing against Benfica, and we're discussing whether he might feasibly be able to cope with the Premier League. It's funny how players react when they're around better players, though. I mean, I've just seen this in Miami with, players playing with suddenly a team that was bottom of the league, having Busquets and Messi come into the team. And there's a lad at Inter Miami, Robert Taylor, who, despite his name, is Finnish, who Phil Neville was playing him as like a wing back, and he was in and out of the team. He was on the bench most of the time. And now he's playing left side of a front three with Messi on the right, and he scored 3 goals in 2 games. Looks an absolute world beater. And he's the exact same bloke and footballer, but you put him in context. And obviously, Dodgson playing for Rochdale with the kind of options he'd have when he's got the ball at his feet are going to be really different. I mean, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that a player like that can raise the game and cope. I mean, you wouldn't want to be throwing him in against Man City on day one, but I don't think he did himself any harm with that display against Benfica.
He did, definitely didn't. And company wouldn't have thrown him in there if he didn't want to at least have a look at him and see what he was capable of, would he?
Right, yeah. It's a lot of interesting.
I said there was the sub that came on. Was it the sub that came on? Is it Jez Davies? It's one of the AI scout, one of the AI scout discoveries, isn't he? So an interesting one there. I mean, if that was to come to fruition, the ex-Chelsea, if that was to come to fruition. It'd be a nice little story, a nice little boost again for the chairman's little software plan there.
Yeah, the other signing that's come in this week is Luca Koleosho, who we talked about a little bit last week. I wanted to find out a bit more about him because he's an intriguing character, born in the United States and eligible for 3 or 4 different countries. Only played a handful of games for Espanyol's first team before coming over to Burnley. So I spoke to Brian Sciaretta, who's an American journalist who specializes in following the fortunes of American players when they go to Europe, writes for American Soccer Now, and has for years has really been following all the American and Canadian players who've been popping up in Europe and written about some of the players like Christian Pulisic and so on before they became big stars. And me and Greavesy sat down with him and picked his brains a little bit about Luca Koleosho. So, Brian, thanks for joining us. Luca Koleosho's moved to Burnley. A lot of people interested by it. Obviously, a player born in the United States who you've tracked. But there's not a lot of information out there, not a lot of videos for people to look at to get a feel for him like they do with other signings that Burnley have made this summer. What kind of player should Burnley expect to see when Luca Koleosho pulls on the claret and blue shirt?
Yeah, I mean he's an attacking winger. He straight up really is very aggressive, very athletic, quick. He can cut inside though and hit shots from a distance. He's an explosive player. I think the people I know, at least at the youth level, have rated him quite highly. And now it's a question of taking that and moving forward to like the senior team levels on a more consistent basis. But everyone who rates him, talks about him, and evaluates him as players, starting with youth national team coaches. They all like him, and and he progressed really quickly over there in Spain. He was breaking through barriers very quickly, moving U18s, U19s, that level quickly.
Yeah, and he's a player, obviously, on his international front. He's played for the US at under 15 level, I believe, and now he's with Italy's under 19. I also read that he was called up to a camp for the full Canadian national team, who he's also eligible for, but he didn't take part in that, or he certainly hasn't been capped by Canada. What indication do you have about where he sees his future in terms of like his national team commitments?
Yeah, I mean, when he went to those Canadian camps the last summer, the goal was, he didn't want to put himself in a cap tying situation with them. He was still, playing the field, as we like to say. He's he's got it's all through his mom, who was born in Canada, but her parents are from Italy. That's how the situation came. I know the U.S. was talking to him very heavily from the highest levels, to him to keep him in the system. There was I even heard a rumor that Greg Berhalter was on the phone with him, trying to convince him to play. But understanding though that the avenue would be through the US U20s first, and then Italy was after him pretty sincerely for their U19 team. And then last March he had to make a choice: U20 World Cup or U19 levels with Italy, and he went with Italy. It's still not permanent, but he can only leave if he wants to file a one-time switch. And my guess is that he's going to go with Italy as long as he can go, and then if that doesn't lead him to the senior team, then maybe he'll start seeing if the U.S. or Canada are interested. If they're still interested, if he's good enough for them too. I mean, he's still got a long ways to get to that level. But I think it's Italy first, U.S. second, Canada third.
Yeah, just interested in his kind of footballing backstory in that respect. I think he obviously played quite a bit at a couple of teams on the East Coast, I think in America, and then I think he said he'd been with Espanyol since he was kind of 15 or 16. Is that a fairly well trodden path for a lot of young Americans coming over to Europe? They kind of start in these feeder clubs. I know in England we've got kind of certain parts of the country where lots of players develop. What do you see as a very typical pathway to where he's landed now at Burnley?
No, it's more of a pathway that you would have found more common 10, 15 years ago. Most of the paths kind of start in MLS through the academy system, and then you negotiate a sale over, abroad. You saw that obviously Brendan Aronson and Tyler Adams, and Canada you had Alphonso Davies. There's been a lot of good people taking that route, and then some of the more well-connected players sometimes find ways to bypass it, like Tim Weah and Gio Reyna. Funny enough is that he kind of comes from the same background clubs. His paths crossed with Gio and James Sands in that New York scene. New York, Connecticut's kind of a scene. So that's kind of his contemporary, his peers. But to kind of get overseas before you're 16 years old, 18 years old, you need that passport, right? You need that foreign passport, and that's kind of like and then not everyone wants to slug it out in the academy routes over there. They'd rather make real money as on homegrown and then work a sale abroad. So as MLS has improved substantially and its academies have gotten much better, you don't find this route as common. But he's kind of blazing his own path. I always got the sense that he's kind of like a real trailblazer here, and wanting to do his own thing and make use of the resources he has to do that.
Yeah, you mentioned a kind of a scene, New York, Connecticut. I'm always fascinated by these kind of ecosystems that evolve in places, whether it's football or any sport, really. And I think the American ways, the American sports system is kind of set up for this. Is that somewhere where you see Premier League clubs, perhaps with American influence, like we've got at Burnley, perhaps bypassing that stage where they've got Luca from, in terms of letting somebody else pick him up in Spain? Is there enough talent in those pools that actually Premier League clubs might start to get interested, a bit like Espanyol clearly were to bring him over to Europe that way?
Yeah, well, he didn't go directly to Espanyol. He was with Royce first, and then he moved to Espanyol once he was at a lower level in Spain. I just think he wanted just to be abroad, and even was willing to start at very low levels to do that. And then, most of his climbing was over there. He didn't just land at a big club. I think he's one of these things where he had a youth coach who had a contact back there, and he really wasn't scouted, more or less. He was kind of introduced and then got on the plane and went. There's a lot of talent here. But yeah, I do think it's tough though for to try to pull an American kid away at a very young age to just to join academy routes. I think every player I speak to wants to end up at the highest level as possible, and that's in the Champions League level clubs and stuff like that too. But more and more, the players kind of see MLS as an important step that's going to help them get there, and just look at some of the teenagers that are on Inter Miami now. Like there's now millions of people watching their games.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. There always are going to be, in a country of 330 million people, people taking some different routes here too. But this comment, the bypassing MLS and trying to hope that you're with one of those small youth only clubs here, and as your first step, as your last step in the United States before you make that move abroad. It still happens, but it's not nearly as common.
And Brian, last thing, in terms of his style of play, is there anyone you can think of from what you've seen of him who he compares to? I mean, is he very much a sort of the modern winger as like a wide attacker, you would say, like somebody who's playing inside left as well as outside left, or
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I haven't watched all of his full games over there in the academy levels in Spain.
sure.
I've seen a lot of the highlights and I've seen some extended clips, and I see him do cutting center quite a bit, and making plays there too. So it comes down. I think he likes to kind of he's versatile, but he is explosive. I think, but I do think he does like to. I mean, do I want to say he's like your typical American winger, like a Pulisic or a Weah? I mean, obviously not at that level, but there are some comparisons there to a Pulisic level player. I think he likes to crack it from distance more than Christian does when he cuts center. I think Burnley is going to be happy with him. Again, it took some scouting here too, but what's impressed me the most is just how quickly he jumped from one level to another in Spain. Like he never really lasted a full season because they were like, okay, he's ready for the next level. He's ready for the next level. He was moving really, really quickly, and that's something that's important that you want to see at a player who's 17, 18 years old.
Absolutely, and that's exactly the kind of thing that, from what we've had conversations with other people, Vincent Kompany, Burnley's coach, looks for that in players. The players he's brought in from Belgium, for example, like Anas Zaroury, who probably plays in the position that you're talking about for Luca, has made those rapid progressions. Other players have too. They've just rapidly jumped through the levels. So that's going to be interesting. Thanks very much indeed, Brian, for that insight. I'm sure everyone listening's interested to learn those things, and we look forward to seeing Luca playing for Burnley soon.
Thank you very much, guys.
So yeah, fellas, I mean, he's an interesting one, isn't he? I mean, it does sound from what Brian's saying there that he's a player that might have the potential to be more than a development player this year.
So listening to Vincent Kompany discuss him on it was after Saturday's game, and he that word again, pace. I think Simon Crabtree from the club has said, what does he give you? And he's pace. So it's I see again he's got good background, hasn't he? So it's just a case of him, as he was starting to sort of kick into the first team picture at Espanyol, whether he can do similar here. But again, that asset, if he's got that lightning pace, and it's going to serve him well at this level.
He does seem to like players, Justin, doesn't he? Kompany does seem to like players who've got interesting backgrounds, whether it be, an Iraqi defender playing in Belgium or a Canadian, Italian, Nigerian, American playing in Spain. I mean, he does seem to...
Do you think that might be... Is that the criteria that he uses to pick these players out, do you think?
No, I just wonder, I mean, he comes from quite an interesting background himself, doesn't he? I mean, I just wonder if in his mind it's a little bit sometimes that, like, if you come from these kind of backgrounds, you've probably got an open mind. You've probably had a little bit of adversity to deal with in your life as well. I wonder if that is a factor.
It could be, couldn't it? I mean, all these players seem to have overcome something to get where they are and battle to get this opportunity. So maybe in the back of his mind, at least, that's something that he considers. I don't know about Koleosho, whether he's got that sort of adversity in his background, but he doesn't seem to me like he's been signed as a development player. They usually say, don't they, he's going to join the development squad or whatever. He looks like he might be on the fringes in and around and be given a bit of an opportunity. So it'll be interesting to see how he shapes up. But I think Chris
he got a signing video, didn't he? He got a signing video.
He did, absolutely, and they don't always get that, do they? I think it's all these players that we're talking about now, they've all got that pace, haven't they? That Chris was talking about, and I think Kompany is obviously very, very aware that the time and the spaces you get in the Premier League are not going to be the same as the time and the spaces that you get in the Championship.
I mean, you could see somebody who's got that kind of lightning pace that he apparently has. And if you've had Zaroury on the left and he's been really working their fullback for 75 minutes and giving him a torrid time, but maybe the score's level. I mean, this happens in the Premier League that we didn't get last season, where we can play really, really well, be on the front foot, be doing really well, but be a goal behind or level, and you know, it doesn't always go your way, does it? And then you can bring on a lad who's just got raw pace up against that tired fullback. I mean, it just sounds an interesting option to have, doesn't it?
Very much so. But sort of talking about Zaroury again there as well. So I know nothing come to fruition really, but some of his touches against Benfica on Tuesday night, there's a little turn on the byline, and he just looked absolutely full of it. I'm really looking forward to it.
He also looked to me like he'd sort of bulked up a bit, or
I noticed that.
He looked like more of a man than he did last season, when he looked like a bit of a boy on the playground, didn't he? But he looks a bit sort of more like he was ready for the battle, as well as had all the tricks in his box.
Yeah, well, it is a more physical.
I'm just really looking forward to seeing how he impacts it.
Yeah, I think he's a fantastic footballer, and I think it's interesting. You do wonder as well if company's not said to a few of them, look, you're going into a league here. People talk about the Championship being a physical league and all that, and I suppose it is. But when you go into the Premier League, it's physical in a different sort of way, isn't it? I mean, when you see these players warming up and you compare what it was like 20 years ago, and you see some 19-year-old fullback for a Premier League team, and they're just ripped and packed with muscle and super fit, and it's not like it used to be. But it's not really like that in the Championship either, is it? You can get away with being a little bit.
I can remember, you're going back, like, Adrian Heath really making a point of how good Andy Cook's physique was. Andy Cook was always like fit as a butcher's dog, Cookie, but he was like sculpted from granite. He was, very much. Every one of them's that way now, aren't they? They're, but it's not. There's the physical element, but it's the mental element. Like, so you're going to be the concentration levels at that. We witnessed, Sean Dyche's team. How many times you got to be so focused. The bunkered in at times, and the slightest slip, and an Arsenal or Liverpool or whatever going to kill you. But and there is much to be said for, like Sean used to say, going to these stadiums for the first time, and the noise around the Premier League, like he used to say, that the pre-match press conferences are bigger. Sky want a piece of you before and after every game, and it's just a big. Every game's like a mega event, even though you're playing Luton or Brentford or Bournemouth. It's painted out to be such a bigger spectacle. And I say, if they're going to Stamford Bridge 1 minute and the Emirates the next, it's just an altogether different test, isn't it?
Totally different, and we haven't got a lot of players. That's why, going back to what you were saying, Justin, about Townsend and Redmond as well. That will be a big asset, because if we look through that team, even some of the players that aren't like raw kids, but players like Ekdal and so on, it's and the lads who've come from Belgium, it's nothing like the Premier League. I mean, it's nothing. They're probably coming from Belgian league, where you often played in front of 10, 12,000 fans. Probably the Championship felt like a big stage for a lot of those players, but they don't know what's going to hit them until when they get in the Premier League. I mean, they know. But it will affect them. That first game, is even at home against City, it's going to feel a different sort of game, that one, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that's true, but it could work in our favour as well. It's one of those things, isn't it, where you want these lads to come out and show no fear. And judging by the way they played last season, they won't be overawed by that. But it is true. It is a different ball game that they're playing now, isn't it? And it's useful to have those old heads who've seen it and done it to say in the dressing room, like, right, lads, let's just calm down, and this is what we need to do now.
Charity Shield's in just over a week. It's getting close, isn't it? I mean, let's finish off with this one. I mean, given we've got our fixtures lined up, we've got the games that we're playing, we're still active in the transfer market, but it's getting close now.
Yeah.
What's the City game? The date? August.
It's 2 weeks. 2 weeks tomorrow. Isn't it?
2 weeks away from that.
2 weeks tomorrow. Yeah.
What would you say are the absolute priorities that we need to get done in the next 2 weeks to be in maximum shape for that game against City? Whether it be signings or anything else.
Well, I think we need a left back, don't we? That's something that's a hole that definitely needs filling. We need to sign Nathan Teller. We need to get hold of a good, strong, built central midfielder who can challenge for a spot right away. Not a development player, but somebody who's going to stake a claim for a place. And then it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think you've absolutely nailed it there. Yeah. Anything else you can think of, Chris? I mean, I think Justin's nailed it there.
Oh yeah, everyone wants a young Vieira, don't they? That sort of box to box physical ball playing midfielder. But I don't think there's many like him anymore, unfortunately. No, we definitely need that sort of physical, mobile, ball manipulating centre mid. Charlie Taylor, he's no mug and he certainly do a job at left back. But in Vincent Kompany's system, the requirements. He's not going to get to pick and choose when he goes forward like he might have done under Sean Dyche. He's going to be back and forth and high up the pitch and, hightailing it back, the other way sort of thing. So it's a huge ask. Ideally, Maatsen comes in on loan, but that one might go all the way to the end of August. You never know. But I still think, even if Teller comes in, I'd still like to see that out and out number 9. Really,
I've been thinking exactly the same all the way through the window. We need that number 9. And again, sorry to give examples from Inter Miami matches, but I'm watching that game and they've got a striker playing number 9, who people are saying like, he's not that great, and he hasn't had a shot on target during the 2 games that Messi's been here and so on. And I'm watching the way they play, and obviously the way they set up with a Barcelona coach is familiar. It's a similar style and formation. You can tell what they're trying to do, and it is similar to the Pep way, and it's similar to the Kompany way. And I'm watching it, and you've got these two. You've got Messi on the right and this lad Taylor on the left, who are both playing the socks off. And the number 9's he is a number 9. He's not a big lad, but he's absolutely plays on the line normally, and he's dropping into the hole and playing almost that false 9 position. And it did make me start to think, is he that bothered about a big number 9 or a goal-scoring number 9? Because we've got players who can drop in that hole there, and we've got an abundance of wide players who can attack from the left and right. So maybe it's not as big a priority as I was thinking. I don't know. I mean, the way we play doesn't depend on a number 9, does it, Justin? Or am I being optimistic there?
No, I think we did play that way last season, didn't we? That's why Barnes became the player he did, didn't he? Because Kompany thought, I'll turn him in. He's going to be my number 9 after J-Rod got injured. Yeah. So I think he does want. I think you just want that sort of player. Who doesn't want that guy who's going to be in the 6-yard box doing the tap-ins? Who doesn't? We need that, don't we? You've got to source your goals from everywhere on the pitch. So I think he probably, if he could get one, he probably would. But I think the problem is we've got Weghorst, haven't we? And I think we need to ship him out before we can get somebody else in. Because we've already got like 2 or 3 players who can play in that position.
Yeah.
So I think that would be number 1. If Weghorst's staying, he's probably going to be, vying for that role with Foster, isn't he?
Right. Well, that's been a pretty upbeat episode from the BOL, and we haven't had a real whinge about anything, have we?
There's something else, Simon, that we need to mention. Mission to Burnley. It's got a release date.
That's right. August the
10th. As if we weren't excited enough for the start of the Premier League season the day after. August the 10th, we can indulge in 3 hours plus of the glory of last season.
So it's all been released one as a box set, is it?
I believe so, yeah. Oh, there's 4 episodes of it, so it's access all areas. It's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because I'm sure that our perception of what went on last season is going to be upended by what's revealed in this. Because I think they're in the training ground, they're in the dressing room, they're everywhere, aren't they?
Yeah, they can either be really, really good and fascinating, these things, or they can be like a bit sort of, I don't know, they can end up being a bit hackneyed and fake feeling, some of them. I mean, I've seen some brilliant ones and some pretty poor ones. I mean, it just depends, doesn't it? I mean, is it a documentary about Vincent Kompany and how he turned Burnley around, or is it a documentary about, people from Utah moving to East Lancashire and buying a football club? I don't know which one it is, really.
No, we'll have to wait and see, won't we? But it's going to be, we're going to be up late that night, aren't we?
Oh, I've seen clips of the Newcastle one, and it's just hearing Eddie Howe swear. That's just blown my mind. It just, I wouldn't have thought little cherubic angel-faced Eddie swearing. No, I've said you've probably seen. Have you seen the quarterback one on Netflix? Simon? I thought that was a great scene.
Yeah. No, there's been some really good ones in American sports. Yeah. I mean, the Hard Knocks series, I don't know if you've seen it. You don't like American football, do you, Justin? So you probably not watched it.
No, I haven't seen
it. But that is a proper fly on the wall. And I actually bumped into one of the lads who worked on it when I was covering a golf tournament. And I said to him, how do you get that fly on the wall coverage there? I said, because it feels really like raw. There's a bit where this time of year, really, just coming up, they come into pre-season camp, the NFL teams, and then they have like 60 or 70 players on the squad, and then they cut them in sort of 2 or 3 waves, and it's brutal because there's no guaranteed contract. That's it, you're out of the door. Good luck to you, son, and pick up your final paycheck, and that's it. And they also trade people without any sort of consent involved. And there's this one lad going in there into the office, and they said, "Right, pack your bags, you're off to Pittsburgh." And he's living in Miami, and he's like, well, "Can I talk to me gran?" He lived with his grandma at the time. He's just completely, his life's just changing. And you're watching it, and you think, this is brutal, And the guy said, "Yeah, it literally is the fly on the wall. We've got a hidden camera in there, and everyone forgets it's there. It's amazing." And somebody sits down and watches hours and hours of footage waiting for the golden moments, which is completely different from when you see those, like that Tottenham Amazon one with Mourinho's conversation with Dele Alli that's like, looks really staged and stuff. So we'll see. Let's hope there is a bit of fly on wall on it. And come on, we've got to whinge about something. Last thing, away kit. We saw it on the field.
The away kit. The worst I've ever seen in a Burnley with a Burnley badge on it.
Really?
I got to agree with that. Although I will say this, as with the home kit, the sponsor's logo does not do it any favours, does it? I mean, what colour is it for a start? Why is it pink? It's massive as well. And I'm not a fan of the stripe down the side. Just a simple yellow.
It's supposed to be a tribute, tribute to the 94.
They say that, don't they? But what they've done is they've got a shirt off the peg, and they've looked back over the years to see if there's anything even vaguely similar.
Yeah, that's exactly
and claimed there's some sort of.
It looks more like the 97 away strip that the Chris Waddle era.
I'm waiting.
Would have been a nice one.
I'm waiting for that third kit now. I was, I'd budgeted to buy myself a shirt for this season so that I could do the North American Clarets thing on a Saturday morning. You've seen the suggestions
of the away, the third strip. You've seen the suggestions of that.
I haven't.
Yeah, if you haven't, get on Twitter and Google and have a bit of fun with that. So,
that doesn't sound good.
Go on. What are we talking about? Black or white or?
Well, we're supposed to be from what I've whether it's 100% correct or not, but there's a blue and white side to it. Shall we say?
Oh, come on, we can't
not
have
blue
that.
and white halves.
No,
come on, we can't
have that.
I have seen one knocking about with like some zigzags, blue and white down one side, and then plain white on the other half, and it is a bit too close to a blue and white half shirt.
No. I think there'd be riots, wouldn't there?
There'd be absolute uproar. There was uproar with quarters, weren't there? Never mind halves. Even if it is
there were people with quarters who were like, quarters. It's nearly half, isn't it?
Well, that was with
green and black.
The green and black halves. I remember this was the same. Someone said in one of the remember the fanzines of the day. Is it like dress like clowns, play like clowns? I think that was
brilliant. Right, so a relatively whinge-free episode of From the Be-All End comes to a close. We'll be back again next week. We'll be talking about the Real Betis game that's coming up on Friday. And, lots to look forward to. It's drawing closer and closer and closer. Don't forget to follow us on @BeHole Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, everywhere else. Please do leave a rating. I don't want to beg for ratings, but it does help us get a little bit of visibility for any Burnley fans who haven't seen us yet. And just bung your mates a WhatsApp and tell them about this podcast because, we've got the season coming. It's all going to be up and running soon, and it's all going to get very, very lively indeed. All the best. Enjoy your football this weekend and speak to you soon.